Hello, welcome to episode 68 of the pod where we talk about comics. Dan's going to jump right into it with the Iron Man annual that he read this week. I also read it. Why did we read this? It wasn't by Christopher Cantwell.
Yes, it's by my boy Jed MacKay. So, Iron Man Annual Number One, written by Jed MacKay, art by Abraham Robertson, colors by Rochelle Rosenberg. So the issue opens to Iron Man and Miles Morales facing off against Moloids in Brooklyn, who apparently are not under the control of Mole Man and are preaching how much they love Seinfeld and Friends. They just want to have a good time. So Tony gets them a bunch of food trucks to keep them occupied, as Miles tells Tony the story of how the assessor experimented on him and how he barely got out of it. So obviously this is a gap of something that I didn't actually read, but we kind of filled in here on that. So Tony vows to hunt down the assessor and is able to find the address of his operations, where he runs into Goons and Quantum, and then is captured and forced to break out of the assessor's trap. So we get some really cool moments here where Tony's kind of face off against Quantum and stuff like that. Iron Man is able to locate the assessor and beat him handily, but not before the assessor loads a backup of himself elsewhere, where we see Quantum looking like he is under some type of control by the assessor as well. This was a fun issue. I thought it was, it moved pretty quickly for an annual, to be honest, but I liked it. The characterization here, I think, by Jed MacKay of Tony is preserved from what we saw in Cantwell's run, so I think that's continued here. The armor, love this type of armor, and the relationship between Miles and Tony, I think, is pretty palpable in this. I don't know if that's the right wording, but it's pretty cool to see that relationship and how quickly Tony is to spring into action. Talking about kind of how this is his realm to kind of take care of, since the assessor is kind of like a technological villain, so Tony sees an obligation to take care of it since that's his realm. But I know some of our friends read it this week, liked it, which kind of, I guess, spurred Mike to read it. So I'll give him the floor to kind of give his thoughts. You're muted.
It's been a long night. It started simple, it got bigger, but I don't agree at all where the characterization is the same from Cantwell's run. He's way too quippy. MacKay's writing MCU Tony, which is like -2 stars off a rating or so for me on that end. But I like the beginning. This is tied into some sort of Infinity Stone shenanigan thing. I think the next one's Captain America. So are you continuing on? I'm tapping out here. Like, it was all right, but nothing that makes me want to read like 5 more of these things.
Yeah, no, I have no interest in reading that event or whatever it is. So no.
All right. Yeah. But no, otherwise it was fine. Finale of that Iron Fist book that you and Vince read.
Correct. This is the 6th issue by Larry Hama, Dave Wachter. So all the heroes can't take out this giant dragon, even as Iron Fist and Okoye combine their dragon heart-powered chi. So they contemplate killing Pei, who's, again, this little girl, her pet dragon, Gork, who seems to be like a child dragon, or maybe he's just tiny, which is really screwed up, but they do it anyways. And then, there's a couple of panels where Pei is just, carrying around his corpse after they've ripped his heart out. It's so weird. So Okoye now has double chi because she already got some earlier by killing the other dragon. And now she has an Iron Fist tattoo on the top of her bald head out of nowhere, because that's how, I guess, Iron Fist tattoos work. You don't actually go get them tattooed. And she takes out the dragon, so now she has triple chi. And then Danny gives her the Iron Fist. So I guess maybe she has quadruple, depending on how you count it. Because, of course, Danny originally got his from killing, I don't remember his name, but the original dragon from in Kunlun. So now she has to take on the main villain guy whose name is like Hierophant or whatever. She wins. All the zombie ninjas turn to dust. It stops raining as well. And Gork will be reborn as the new all-powerful dragon, like the supreme one. So Pei is handed an egg. And this ends with Okoye transferring the Iron Fist powers into the egg, so it's going to return to the dragon. So I was right and wrong that she was the next Iron Fist, but she doesn't stick with the next Iron Fist, even though I guess she keeps the other two pieces of chi from the other two dragons. I don't know. Or maybe she transferred it all into the egg. But now Danny doesn't have his powers either. So really this story ends with no Iron Fist. I mean, he's still Iron Fist. It's just, and he's still a martial artist who's like, knows what he's doing and is really good, but he has no powers. And also this entire time, like, circa the, when she was introduced to character in the Carrie Andrews run, Pei is supposed to have the Iron Fist abilities as well. They're like split with Danny. And that was like kind of not addressed through the way. This is a really weird way to leave things. It started out like a really cool celebration of Iron Fist lore and using obscure villains like we've talked about in a not disrespectful way, but it awkwardly ends up with Iron Fist like in the last two issues, and really especially this one, the main character that this book is titled after just gets completely upstaged in his own book by Okoye. I mean, she's on the cover of this one. I don't even think Iron Fist is on the cover of this issue, which, like, I mean, that's fine, but it is like a mini series. So especially when you only have 6 issues to work with, and this is the finale, it's kind of weird. And like, she ends up winning the day. She defeats the big dragon threat, which was teased for multiple issues, and defeats the main bad guy. And Danny just kind of is there and like helps, like powers her up so that she can do it instead of him. And then his powers don't exist at the end of the book. So it's a really weird way to end it. I like the first 3 issues really, a ton or however many issues. I'm not sure exactly where it slightly shifted. And I mean, overall, on the page, the writing and the art still, ended at a high level, but just the slight direction in the story, I thought it was very strange and I don't really like it. That said, because I liked the execution and the characterization and everything like that, I might be down for a sequel by the same team if they were to do another and just like fix the stuff that I didn't like at the very end. But I'm guessing, Dan, you did join me for this finale, I think. So let me know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much touched on a lot of stuff that I kind of felt about this, but yeah, I mean, the way the series started, it definitely didn't end in the same way, in the same fashion, and yeah, I would say the ending does kind of leave me a little unfulfilled in a lot of ways. I mean, good for the other characters, but yeah, I mean, the title character of this book, I feel like doesn't really get the development that you would hope. But I mean, like you said, aside from that, I really like this art style. I'm not familiar with the artist, honestly. I don't think I've read a lot of stuff of his before.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Yeah, so I hope we see more of his stuff going forward. I mean, if there's one thing to take away from that, but no, I think this is solid. Yeah, it's kind of subverted expectations for us, I guess. So that's pretty much all I got.
Yeah.
Fifth issue of Batman, Catwoman. This is Tom King, Clayman, Tomomori. So we're entering that midpoint here. 12-issue miniseries. We're at issue 5, so almost the middle. But the kind of critical point of the book is that if it's called Batman, Catwoman, where's Batman? Lowest screen time for Batman here is he's on one panel and then a splash page, so 2 pages total through an entire 22-page comic book. And he shares the title character. But Catwoman's almost on every page, so I don't fully understand the singular criticism of that. Like, they are sharing the title here. But something isn't totally clicking, and we can get into that where, and this is the valid criticism, I think, when I see people talking about it, is the almost stagnant way the plot's moving. This has been a delay. Like, there was a delay on this book, and it hasn't helped because it's felt like nothing has happened. But by far, issue 5, I would say, is the worst of this, as not really anything has advanced so far here. So, like, the old timeline, Selina's attacked by angry Harley Quinn because she wanted to kill the Joker, and Selina did it back in, like, issue 1. So she's all crazy and psychotic and wants to kill Selina. So, keep in mind now we have 2 women who are, like, in their mid-60s doing acrobatic stuff, but their bodies are drawn like they're in their 20s. Every issue, it becomes harder to look at Clayman's work objectively. Like, there are parts where it looks great, but also, like, there's like 3 things every issue where I go, that's not good. But I think also this was easily his worst issue of the series by far. Some really weird looking faces and figures in that fight, and we've seen him draw better fights before. The past timelines, we get Selina drunk at a bar where she wants to resort back to being a thief, but stopped and saved by Batman. And then the other part is her plot with Phantasm, where Phantasm kills a man in front of her because he worked with the Joker, and to prove that she's not going to go as far as Batman to stop and save lives. Which, okay, and then back to the future timeline, Helena Wayne walks in and sees, like, the body of Harley. It's like, Harley's tied up, so it's unsure if she killed Harley. But, I mean, she did kill Joker, so you can infer it either way. We don't truly know yet, but it's like, what's going on? Outside of that, I mean, it's not great. 5 issues in, but if I were a betting man, I would say that the second half will focus more on Batman, and that's where we get from the title of the book from, and then they'll converge near the end. That would be my guess, but yeah, I trust Tom King enough on Batman that this will make sense, but, month to month with different spaces of time between, it's harder to keep the excitement about the series when I was very hyped at the beginning.
Yeah, Mike already touched on, Batman barely being in this, and I have just a couple more nitpicks. We start with a classic Tom King device of using song lyrics as narration. It wasn't, super distracting like other times where he's tried to weave it between dialogue. So it wasn't that bad, whatever. Catwoman, I'm pretty sure I don't think we've seen this costume before, where she's got this weird, like,
we
costume.
We saw it in issue 1.
Okay. Maybe we're just seeing more of it here, but I think it looks really stupid. Harley looks a little weird too, but it's more like it's kind of like the classic costume, but like they cut off her sleeves or something. It's really weird.
With the mask though,
yeah.
I like. It's just like
and she has a weird, like, doll mask kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned the delay. I wasn't following exactly when we were reading them along the way, but I don't know if the delay helped or hurt, or if it was just like, this is the delay, but it's still going to look bad, because I thought I think this was weaker among the other issues, but more so than the, average, total score on the art side. I think it was super inconsistent page to page in this issue. I mean, when I think of Clayman, he has that certain style. Like, I mean, I guess because they both work with King, but like sometimes Clayman's work kind of has like that barely like Mikkel Janin type of look, where there's like very polished, like a slightly 3D look, even though Man is like very much closer to traditional, art style for comics. But like, there's some pages in here where you see that, where he's like, putting all the effort in, and it looks like, the best of what you'd expect from him. And then other pages, it's like scratchy and stuff. I just thought it was really inconsistent. And I mean, I question, like, do they just make all these series 12 issues because that's what, like, everyone needs and expects, like the marketing? And it's like, Tom King's the 12 issue guy. Like, I mean, we're not even halfway through, but like, does this need to be 12 issues? Because I feel like every other issue, I'm like, I either don't understand what's going on, like the pacing and like weaving between different timelines is funky, or like what the hell happened here? Like, I don't know how this is advancing the plot. I honestly, like, I mean, I know like what we're getting to, but like I couldn't 100%, like I can't 100% tell you like what the point of this is, like what the actual like plot is. I mean, I do know, but I also don't, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
well, that's the problem. We're not there yet, but we're 5 issues into a 12-issue miniseries.
yeah. You took the words right out of my mouth, Vince. I was gonna say that it's like this is like this. I don't think this really had to be a 12-issue series. I mean, you could definitely have wrapped this up in 6. I don't know. Like you said, I think it's just that.
How can you say that when we don't know what it is yet? Clearly, it needs more than 6. When we're at 5 and nothing's happened.
When all is
Well,
said
that's
and
the
done,
point. Nothing's happened, so
Yeah.
speed it up and crunch it down.
when all is said and done, it's gonna be either you could have either done it in 6 or 8. I think that's what I'm predicting. At least the drawing of the cats is good in this issue. I think.
Phantasm looks good. That's probably the best page of the entire book.
Yeah, that was a cool page. I mean, the Batman's page, all right, and we only get one panel of Selena in lingerie. Very disappointing from Clay Mann. not what we come to expect from him.
If you're gonna give us a filler issue, give us more lingerie.
Well, Selena did point out that Phantasm did change her clothes because that was the criticism from issues 3 to 4.
Well, it wasn't even criticism. It was just creepy, so everyone called attention to it.
Yeah.
It's like, why did you?
Yeah, they called attention to it. I mean, I'm a person who was a fan of King's 85 issue run on Batman, so I wanted more of it, but it's making it hard to keep a maintained level of intrigue when there's such a delay between issues and nothing moves. It's almost like I just want to wait for it to finish and then maybe save it for some sort of other thing where we come back and review it, honestly. But I'll go to Justice League.
I thought I was. Okay. Justice League number 62, written by Brian Michael Bendis, art by David Marquez, colors by Ivan Placencia. Our story opens with Hippolyta showing up at the Hall of Justice when she runs into Flash, who brings her up to speed, pun intended, on everything going on. Meanwhile, Aquaman is still licking his wounds as he is rescued by this family who talks about this guy named Zumbato, who's, I guess, approaching or coming near. Elsewhere, Brutus is facing off against the rest of the JLA while his little cheerleading team cheers him on from the sideline. Brutus doesn't really isn't really characterized like the way that I would imagine him to be, like for a character like he appears. He talks like Brian Michael Bendis. I think we talked about this last issue. We did a Justice League issue, but yeah. So Brutus is facing off against the rest of the JLA when Aquaman shows up in a big giant tank with, I think, the family inside, and helps out with the battle. Hippolyta shows up as well, and Zumbato, who we talked about earlier, he shows up ready to begin more trouble. I think this is the point where I jump off. I think I briefly jumped back on this, and now I'm jumping off. I mean, the plot is not hard to follow, but there's just something about this I just don't like. I mean, I just don't think this feels weird. I don't think this doesn't feel like a Justice League issue. It feels like, I don't know what it is. I just don't like it. Exit stage left for me.
It feels like a Brian Michael Bendis team book in 2021. That's what it feels like.
Well, I don't like it.
No, I don't like it either. But the other part is I think this was his best issue, but I'm chopping the book.
Exactly. Like, this was more entertaining than the last issue, but yeah, I just don't.
When the action is good, the book can succeed because of David Marquez's art. But also, the detractor this time is that Tamer Bonvillain didn't do the colors for this issue. So it looks a little bit more flat to me. But that's going to be a stylistic, take. But the banter is better in the battle, but like we didn't have that like any stupid DuckTales moment with Batman this time around. But also, it's his 5th issue. Now the team's finally assembled. Like, we've seen this before. I don't care. And it's really just a way for him to do another Naomi series, because that's where the other big bad guy's from. It was Naomi's villain from her book.
Yeah, we get
So
another shoehorn moment with Naomi in this book too, and I'm just like, okay, we get it. Like, that's your character, but
well,
like,
you didn't even read the first series. So.
No, and I'm glad I didn't, because nothing here shows to me that I want to go out and read that.
Nothing happened.
Exactly.
Well, no. Well, nothing happened in it. That's the issue. Which I'm all cool if you want to have a new character, but do something with them is the point. So that's where we lie on. Like, it feels like, all right, cool, I don't have to read another issue, but it's worth flipping through art if you're in a shop, I guess.
Yeah.
New DC #1, Crush and Lobo.
Yes, the new series by Mariko Tamaki and Amanse Nahuelpan. And this is colored by Tamara Von Vallon. I probably mispronounced the artist's name, though. And this is loosely part of like DC's Pride initiatives. It has like a little logo in the corner because Crush is a LGBT character, as I will get into. So I did not read the Adam Glass Teen Titans series, which introduced Crush, but I'm vaguely intrigued by her as a character because I do like Lobo, and the idea of like this like punky teenage female Lobo. It's kind of interesting. And this is I liked one story she had in like one of the big anthologies. So she has meta narration. We open with a bunch of fights, kind of getting our groove with the character, and she's late for her girlfriend's birthday party. She basically rides Canada's bike from Akira, which is really cool. And I'm pretty sure I'm actually going to make another Akira reference later on the show. She and her girlfriend are very opposite as a couple. It's like, this normal chick, obviously human, versus this punk alien superhero. And because she forgot to like clean the bottom of her shoes after she fought some alien dudes, the chemicals that are on her shoes react with like vanilla and or candles, and it starts a chemical reaction that floods the party with toxic gas. So everyone has to run away, and our girlfriend is obviously a little upset, and they like seem to break up, but later her girlfriend texts her again. So that may, recover as the series goes on. Amiko, aka Red Arrow, who's on the Teen Titans with her, comes to Crush's apartment to check up on her. I'm not really sure how old this character is. I guess they're like 18. Because she seems to be living on her own. And she also has a weird habit or collection or addiction where she has like 20 coffee cups just sitting around her place. And Lobo is in prison and getting therapy, and he invites Crush to join him. But it's Lobo, so I'm sure there's going to be twists and ulterior motives coming up. And we end here with Crush she's stealing a ship from Titan's Tower to go see her dad. This was all right. The art was pretty solid. Like, it's slightly inconsistent panel to panel. Like, Crush is, she's a female character, but she's an alien, and she's the daughter of Lobo. She's like really bulky and like torqued. And in some panels, that's like really accentuated. In some, it's like not. And like her, whatever. Just saying that the art's not super consistent, but it's solid. And especially since I have no real history with this character whatsoever outside of this and like one short story, I can't really say much on Tamaki's characterization of the character. But like, from what we get here, I kind of like the character. It's not like she annoys me or anything. So I am going to stick with this, mostly just to see, really what they do with Lobo and, how these two characters' chemistry works. So I'd recommend it if you're like vaguely interested in Lobo. I'm very excited. The third issue's main cover is an homage to the original Simon Bisley cover for Lobo's Back #1. So I think I'm actually going to physically buy a copy of that issue to rip off the cover to put in the back of a Lobo custom bind.
All right, good stuff. Next issue is Amazing Spider-Man number 67, written by Nick Spencer, art by Marcelo Ferreira, with Carlos Gomez, inks by Wayne Foucher. Teresa Parker visits the Chameleon in a jail cell called the Hiding Place to know more about what happened to her real parents. That's a complicated story. Betty Brant tells Peter that her baby is actually Ned Leeds, which totally screws with Pete and is related to some clone conspiracy stuff that I did not read. So, Peter works on the clairvoyant device with his college friend Jamie, but they're having issues with getting it to work, and they kind of get into like a shouting match. Not really a shouting match, but a somewhat aggressive disagreement, I guess. Later on at home, Jamie is confronted by Chance, who we've seen, I think, a few times in Spencer's run, or maybe once. I know at least one time he's shown up. Who wants the device and threatens to hurt Jamie's mother if he does not comply. We get a dude talking to the Silver Sable, so we're getting some setup with her. The next day, Peter stops by to apologize to Betty when he finds that Ned is in her apartment, which that makes him go crazy and definitely surprises him. Teresa is introduced to Carl Fears, the finisher, who apparently killed her parents. So we get kind of like two full page splash pages at the end of this issue. I would definitely say that Ned Leeds one probably should have been the one that ended this issue. I definitely think it had more impact compared to the one with Carl Fears. I don't really know who he is, but no, this is a good issue. I don't know, Mike. I mean, I know you've read more of this run than I have. Is this the first time Teresa shows up in his run now?
No, and you've been on this show reading issues where Teresa has shown up before.
Oh, whoops. I'm sorry. I read so many issues I forget. Whoops.
I mean, it comes out so often. This brings back the whole stuff from earlier where Teresa's partner got killed by Chameleon and Silver Sable got injured. And then Chance was involved. This is all bringing that back up. But the big ploy here is it's part one of the Chameleon conspiracy is that the Chameleon is now planting the thread that Teresa Parker might not actually be real. She might be an LMD, just like the fake parents that Peter had brought back right before the Clone Saga kicked off. So that's kind of that's the huge deal. Which, I mean, that's the case. It'd be quite the twist. I mean, not that Marvel's ever really given a crap about Teresa Parker. She was introduced in that Spidey OGN that I think Mark Waid wrote with the Marco Dejudovic art. That was pretty good, but then I think outside of that, the only person to use her again was Spencer. So a pretty big layered twist. The bigger one being that Ned Leeds died in Pete's arms very earlier in Spencer's run. So seeing what exactly is going on here is going to be interesting. A lot of stuff happens here. I like it. I'm down. I think Chameleon Conspiracy is going to be fun, but there's 5 different plot threads that are going on here that I'm quite interested in. So with that, we'll go to our second Spider-Man book, which was Non-Stop Spider-Man. So Non-Stop Spider-Man number 3, which is Joe Kelly, Chris Bocciolo, and then 5 anchors: Tim Townsend, Wayne Foucher, Al Vey, John Livesmay, and Jamie Mendoza. Giant action set pieces as Spidey and Nora Winters are racing across the city to try and track down the suppliers of that drug that's taking the lives of some of their friends and classmates. Leads up to a giant train collision in the subway. Thankfully, no one was on the empty train, only the driver that they got out safely. And then ending, we get Pete face-to-face with Baron Zemo, who we saw back in issue 1 being set up as the big bad. The whole chase, too, is they're Pete and Nora trying to fight these 2 guys with powers, too. So it was a big chase scene issue, which is fun. Though, while fun, I felt a little overwhelmed with all that was happening as it was so rapid. And this was another book with a delay between issues, so it took me a few pages to truly remember all that was going on, and even with the handy recap pages that Marvel does at the beginning. But, once again, I think I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Somehow 5 anchors on this book doesn't hurt it, which the art, looks as crisp as ever. If you're a fan of the acquired taste that Chris Bocciolo may be for some comic book fans.
Yeah, I'm still loving this on the art and pacing. it's, it does feel like, you're rocketing through it for better or worse. And if you're in a certain mood, or if you've read a ton of comics as well, like maybe you're like, hey, slow the hell down. I think we noted on earlier issues, I'm sure I bitched about it, but there are some uses of digital effects. Like there's one scene where there's like a train crash and there's like a ton of motion blur. And I think it really just doesn't work in comics, like ever, isn't needed. And I think it actually particularly hurts Bocciolo's artwork, where like he's all about details and stuff. So like if you want to show like a big crash, just like show all the metal and the rocks crumbling and everything. And like that's where his artwork is, perfectly fits, where other artists, wouldn't necessarily be able to show that. So you're just destroying the art by blurring it. There's a kind of neat twist here with the Zapatas, where it's like, hey, there's a misunderstanding, like we're going to be friends now. And then my Akira reference that I teased, their brains go boom, and it's like the end of Akira. The trade for this is currently available for pre-order with the first 5 issues, and sadly, I think that might be the whole series. At first, I thought this was going to be a second ongoing, kind of like they tried for Friendly Neighborhood, even though that only lasted like 2 trades. And also that solicitation seems ahead of time, because we're only reading issue 3 right now, and issue 4 is probably not going to be out until after pre-orders are due. But whatever, that's Marvel's schedule. I hope this would last longer, because obviously I don't read Amazing Spider-Man because I'm not really liking it, and I really enjoy this.
I don't know why you don't like it, but that's you being an old curmudgeon. But
well, I mean, I've said this before when I do talk about it, but I'll put a quarter of my dislike, at least 25% of my dislike of Amazing Spider-Man, just on the schedule, which I think hurts any comic book, whether it's Spider-Man or Batman or anything.
All right.
I didn't read this. Yeah, I didn't read this book.
Thought you did.
No, I did not.
You should.
You should.
I think I started it, but I didn't continue it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like I said, maybe worth grabbing the trade down the line. I'm enjoying.
Yeah.
All right, we're kicking Dan out. We got to talk about the Hellfire Gala.
Bye.
All right, Marauders number 21, which I think is effectively kind of the head of the pack for the gala, at least in this first week. I don't know how long the whole thing is going to last, but it's all surrounding Emma Frost is in charge of it. So this is our really opening salvo. Jerry Duggan and Matteo Loli as usual. It is Hellfire Gala time, as we said. It's hosted by Emma. It's celebrating mutant culture and alliances with human nations. So it's really like a networking event, a political event, and especially in this issue and kind of the other one we read, it really does feel way more focused on like the political element with other characters in the Marvel Universe and other nations and stuff. Like we don't really, in the issues that we read, see much of the mutants just like partying yet. I assume that's to come. I guess they have the tech to open gates to non-mutants. I'm sure we knew that, but I mean, I'm pretty sure we've seen that always. But for some reason, it stood out to me. Every guest gets to wear a flower, but of course, it's their way to track them and stuff. There's a parade of guests that come through here. We see the Avengers, and it's Jason Aaron's dumb team. The Fantastic Four. J. Jonah Jameson is here in a panel with Zero Lines. Dr. Doom is here, and a bunch of political leaders. There's a scene where Reed whispers something to Charles. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a dumb secret, Original Sin style, that we're going to learn like 3 years from now, or if he's just being it, like, measuring their appendages and cursing at him or something, telling him to screw off. Then Charles taunts Franklin for not being a mutant, just further showing that he's an asshole. I mean, as he always has been. And then there's like a couple scenes where we see like some actual recreation. There's some mutants gambling, and the Thing is like, I'm going to gamble with you guys. And there's that one AIM agent who I think was in one of the giant size issues from Hickman. And then the UK, Russia, and Madripoor, they're all whispering together, and they have an alliance cooking, like kind of anti-mutant. Doom has some tension because Latveria's been iffy with mutants. And there's a Shi'ar thing going on, which is covered a little bit more in the next issue we'll talk about. There's also like this weird thing between Emma and Captain America. They have this weird chemistry, and like at first, for a half second, I'm like, are they really going here? But I think it was literally just for a shitty joke. Or maybe, you might find it funny. Something big happens off panel, like before the final 2 pages. I have no idea what the hell happened. It's not shown here. I don't know if it's going to be shown or if it's like some mystery that we're going to piece together in subsequent issues. I'll probably miss most of the filling in series I don't read. But after that, for the final couple of pages, everyone has a reaction to it. But like, I don't know what it is. So like, I don't get their reactions. And then this issue, which kicks off the whole thing, also includes a backup reprint of a story from Classic X-Men by Claremont and Bolton, which was like a flashback to another Hellfire party. And Kitty, Emma, and Shaw reference like the old original Hellfire Club parties. So it kind of makes sense and is at least slightly connected. And it's cool. I mean, it's probably a better comic book than the main story that I just told you about. That's where Marauders number 21 lands.
I thought it has been better than the last few issues of Marauders. I liked what was going on. It's definitely cementing itself as like this centerpiece event where all the X-Men books are going to tie into it. I don't know how long it's going to be, but it's, if it's no more than 2 issues across all of them, I think that's like fine for like a mini summer kind of soiree, for example. But I would say a lot of the fun in this is I've seen on Twitter, which is people editing someone falling down the steps at the Hellfire Gala. That's been pretty funny to see. Some fun Photoshop edits on that part there, but overall, like, I like the idea of it. I like the kind of big plot advances. I like that it's kind of, taking turns to cement another book is like, hey, big events happen in Marauders. Maybe you should pick up Marauders this month. It's that kind of deal. I like Emma here. I think the characterization is really fun. But I actually had more fun with X-Force number 20, which I'll get right into it with that, and then we can break down because we only got 2 X-Men. Well, I can't remember how many X-Men books, but we're only reading these 2 with however how many came out this week. But X-Force number 20, Benjamin Percy, Joshua Cassara. So in X-Force, we saw a little bit of what they were doing at the Hellfire Gala. They're kind of acting as like essential security, but they're doing lots of covert op shenanigans in the background. We see an extended scene of the Kid Omega and Iron Man moment that we saw in Marauders. It has some altered dialogue, but there's like one moment where it hits with the exact dialogue, and then we see the deeper parts that happen afterward. Sometimes that's cool. Sometimes it's just like, okay, did I need that? It depends on how the payoff is, but Sage is kind of feeling down because he's got to man all the monitors. Well, she doesn't get to come to the party, but she spots that the Verendi plant government guy that Beast, put in place by like full on dark corruption is spotted there, and they're having an episode where they're planning themselves, and Emma actually catches onto this and like shows up and is like, hey, I know what you did now, and we're gonna totally get to a point where we're gonna address this later, which I liked. Like, I liked that moment with Emma where she's like, get him out of here now, and we'll deal with this later, because what you've just done jeopardizes everything that we've set in motion tonight. And then meanwhile, Wolverine and Domino have their hands full trying to contain a drunk Deadpool who's upset he wasn't invited to the Hellfire Gala. To find out what happens next, read the next issue of Wolverine, as it says right at the end of this issue, which I can only assume is going to pick up the Wolverine subplot. And it's, the same writer, Ben Percy. I slightly enjoyed this more than Marauders, but in turn, I think has more to deal with this being more focused with X-Force, which is, more contained with them, while Marauders, which was much more broad and setting up the wider narratives that we'll probably hit on throughout this kind of mini event. But Vince, thoughts?
It was fine. The exact duplicate scene with Kid Omega and Iron Man, like you said, it's interesting. It depends on the structure of an event. That can either be really annoying or it can be neat, seen from a different perspective, for better or worse. Yeah, again, Beast just being a total jerk. Bring on Inferno, burn it all down. It's kind of neat seeing Duggan bring in Deadpool. Obviously, he had a long run on that character, which a lot of people liked. And I like
to my knowledge, it's the first time we've seen Deadpool in the Krakoan era.
Well, within the actual X-Men books, I believe you're correct. But while Kelly Thompson was writing Deadpool, he had like an arc or an issue where he tried to get into Krakoa as well. I believe. I didn't read it. And I like how, from this book's perspective, where, you said Emma shuts it all down. So until we get to that point, Kasara kind of draws her in like a slightly creepy way. Like it's lots of up angles. She's in her diamond form. And I thought it was really interesting. It may not have been entirely intentional in the way that I'm describing it, but it worked out pretty well. And yeah, like you said, this is an actual crossover. So I don't think we're going to read the entire Hellfire Gala, and so we won't fully know exactly the structure of it. But it may be more similar to some kind of like segmented events, like Phalanx Covenant, for example, where it's like one event, but it's like 3 interlocked stories within it. And I did quickly look up. It looks like there's 12 issues involved with the Hellfire Gala. There's a one-shot, which I assume is at the end, called Planet Size X-Men. But then you've got an issue of X-Men, which I think 21. I guess that's next week. Yeah, we haven't read that yet. We read 20 recently. And then Marauders.
And we know that Hellfire Gala is going to introduce the new Krakoan X-Men, which I'm assuming that's going to be that. Yeah,
Marauders, Excalibur, X-Force, New Mutants, X-Factor, Hellion, Sword, Way of X, X-Core, Wolverine. And then the one shot, and then a stupid, info book. So I'm definitely not reading it at all.
Yeah. And I know you don't read Wolverine. I'll probably stick around on Wolverine because it ties directly into this, and
I might
isn't dealing with the vampire story.
Yeah, I might actually just poke into that issue since it does directly follow from this, and they're basically using the two. Duggan's using those 2 books the same exact way that he used it in Ten of Swords, where it's just like, I know these books have totally different titles and everything, but I'm just going to make 2 direct chapters.
Right. All right, we'll bring Dan back to talk about Black Cat number 7.
Yes. So Black Cat number 7, written by Jed MacKay, art by Michael Dowling, colors by Brian Reber. On Coney Island, Black Cat is talking to a young black fox about how she got back from the vaults and how she will get rid of Black Fox forever. Turns out that she traveled to the vaults and ran into its ruler, who Black Cat speaks to and convinces them that the fox plans to double-cross them. She's able to burn up the agreement of eternal life while in the vaults, and the guardian that is protecting the vaults shows up to take the Black Fox to the vaults forever. All Black Fox can do is applaud Felicia for a job well done as he disappears into the vaults forever. So very on point with the character. He just kind of just smiles at Felicia as he's being taken down to never appear in the Marvel Universe again. Possibly. Probably not, but we'll see. Later on, Black Cat celebrates with all of her friends in a bar as she ends up kissing Odessa Drake on the rooftop of the bar. Vince can talk a little bit about where this came from, but I guess from what he wrote here, this was alluded to, but turns out that they're a thing, and that she's bisexual, which is interesting. But yeah, this was a great. I'm assuming this is the end of this series. I don't see this going further than that, but we'll see. So that's all I got for Black Cat number 7.
Pretty sure it's solicited for 12 issues.
Well,
we'll see what happens with the rest of it.
Yeah, I got confused for half a second, but I did add a note because I saw some stupid. There was some stupid article recently that was like complaining about certain characters being being revealed as LGBT and stuff like that. And so, yeah, apparently it was like heavily implied in issue 5 but this is where it's like explicitly on the page. And I think some people were even saying that it's heavily hinted at in whatever that stupid Kevin Smith and I think Terry Dodson book was that never finished. I don't think that one finished. Or maybe that one did finish. But apparently she makes some comment about girlfriend, like not having
did finish.
Okay, yeah. But I don't know that people consider that book canon because it also does some other weird things with Black Cat, and it's Kevin Smith, so whatever. But I will talk about Green Lantern now. This is the third issue by Jeffrey Thorne, art by Tom Rainey and Marco Santucci. So we have a couple pieces of the issue here. Mainly it's John Stewart. He's going through like hallucinations. He's a teenager in school with other lanterns. And then we see like what actually happened. Their ship got through the barrier and they set up a base, a physical base, not with like constructs. And then they split up and spread out to explore and such and figure out what's going wrong. John is paired with the lantern Amanita. I don't know if they have appeared before, but they're named after a mushroom and they're a mushroom. There's more trippy stuff as a being impersonates Katmatui, aka Hal Jordan's dead wife, killed by Star Sapphire, Hal Jordan's girl. And it turns out that John's ring just randomly fails in the deep space. So when you don't have the ring, you're just a human floating in space. And he nearly dies, but I guess Mushroom Dude put him in a coma / like put some kind of thing around him to save him, but then bailed on him. I don't know. He's like picked up and now he's rescued by this alien, the Sakari, who was also giving him those hallucinations, I guess to like stabilize him or to like figure him out. It's like probing his mind kind of so she knows more about him. And he's on the planet Sergolon, where he stays stuck for like half a year. We see captions where it's like 5 days later, 100 days later. And toward the end, some pirates show up to enslave people, and they're an alien race that John does recognize from his area. So he tries to go bluff them by intimidating them, implying that he still has his ring and it functions and everything like that. And he just assumes they'll see Green Lantern and run away, but they don't go for that. So he goes down. And then it's not over yet. There's a second kind of section of the book where it's Jo Malene, I think that's her name, from Far Sector. She's back at the busted up Oa, and she's in charge now. She's trying to find every lantern alive or dead across the universe. And Simon Baz, who we thought died at the end of the previous issue, he's alive. He has no ring, and his arm is missing. It sounds like he's going to get it back, but for now he's wearing kind of like a prosthetic / healing device that he can also like shapeshift into a gun, almost like Cyborg, which like his whole like weird gimmick was he carried around a gun anyways. So, it's not that weird. And we also check in on Teen Lantern. And we end with a Hal Jordan tease. Overall, this was kind of confusing. It was flashing between parts, and by nature, the John Stewart segments were really confusing. And the art also seemed way less consistent than previous issues. I was kind of digging it previously in the last 2 issues, but especially the Tom Rainey sections, I believe here, they're a little iffy. I will just say that to be generous.
Yeah, I kind of felt this was a disjointed mess almost in different ways. Thorne trying to balance 3 different narrative characters here. I don't think it works just because you have the long passage of time in the John Stewart segment, and then I believe it's Jo Mullen. And Jo is trying to do her stuff with Simon and Teen Lantern, and it all combined with the power battery failing again. It's not what we wanted after such a strong start of what we liked on issue 1, but I'll stick around because I'm assuming next issue is going to be Thorne's thesis on Hal Jordan. And from social media we can gather that he's not a fan of Mr. Hal Jordan. So, but he's handled him with like nothing disparaging against him so far in the book. So I'm currently, if we're gonna get a whole issue, highlighted on Hal, we'll see how that's handled. But for that, I'll go into our next DC book, which is the Swamp Thing #4. And this is Ram V, Mike Perkins, Mike Spicer. And, after this issue, I want to see Perkins and Spicer up for an Eisner. This is their best issue yet, which it feels like I keep saying that after every issue. As we have Levi in swampy form traversing the green with, the spirit of Alec Holland and as this guide. And the other side, we have the Floronic Man showing his friend / possible love interest, Jennifer, around. Holland, pressuring Levi to figure out what's happening to the green, and more so less saying that, like, whether you like it or not, he's, you're chosen as the new avatar for Swamp Thing, and this is now your responsibility, which I kind of find that interesting, just how that's now pushed onto him, and it's like, well, you better, it's your job to deal with it. It's your curse now, bud, as Holland leaves, but the ending to this season, like, they did escape, they got out, but Jennifer thinks, what she saw was a bad dream and is super afraid of Swampy. And more or less the Floronic Man, I'm guessing, too, even though the Floronic Man was trying to help her. But the ending sees the Suicide Squad being contacted as Amanda Waller has gotten word that a Swamp Thing is loose, and she wants a Swampy for herself on Task Force X. So a lot of double page splashes here that are just kind of breathtaking, and then more of those lovely, highly detailed info section pages of, like, just the highly detailed cross section stuff that we saw from the Future State issues that we're still loving in this title. So, Vince, thoughts?
Yeah, there's some really cool pages. The coloring is fantastic from Mike Spicer. Really enjoy that, especially on some of the pages that you called attention to. But I think the very first page, it's I don't remember the character's name. What's Levi's girlfriend's name, or wife, or however she is, whatever her name.
Jennifer.
Yeah, like the first page, it's her, like, trying to navigate the green, and there's almost like this, like, psychedelic kind of thing where you have, like, the green and then the sunset and everything like that. It's really cool. I'm iffy on the Suicide crossover, but it's, like, kind of actually happened before between these two franchises. And on paper, at least when it's Alec Holland, it actually makes perfect sense because Belle Reve is in Louisiana. Obviously, I believe Levi is based in New York, right? But obviously with the green, and how it seems to be using the green, he could basically, be wherever. And obviously Suicide Squad travels around. That's the whole thing. But just interesting geographic connections. I'm really enjoying this book.
Yeah, I would say it's still, for us, probably the most intriguing and maybe inventive book out of the Infinite Frontier line, of just seeing where this is going to go. Because as of now, we know it has a defined ending because it's only 10 issues. But once again, we say that every time, so I don't want to spend any more time on it. I'll let Dan talk about Basilisk #1, new series.
All right, so Basilisk #1, written by Cullen Bunn, art by Jonas Scharf, colors by Alex Guimarães. Our story opens to these people dressed in scrubs, it looks like, coming down from a mountain and killing people in this, like, small town. We then see this woman, Reagan, go out to a restaurant where she is confronted by another woman, Hannah, at gunpoint after she leaves the restaurant. Later on, Reagan wakes up after being handcuffed and beaten up by Hannah and speaking with her, who is basically questioning her about the people who came down from the mountains that we saw in the beginning of the issue. Suddenly, a guy breaks into the room. I guess they're in, like, a hotel room or something. He breaks into the hotel room with a shotgun, to which Hannah is able to defend herself before Reagan uses a power with her eyes that kills all the intruders, but leaves her eyes bleeding. Reagan has, like, this, like, cloth that goes over her face to cover her eyes, but her eyes are bleeding here. Elsewhere, a bunch of other individuals comment about how Reagan has gotten herself in trouble, and I'm certainly intrigued by this, and we'll be staying on for another issue. The last panel, the way they kind of show these people, I would imagine, I think Reagan's probably part of this group of people that came down from the mountains and have these powers. But the way they kind of showed these characters, one of them, I got X-Men vibes. There was like a bald guy sitting on the grass meditating, which kind of reminded me of Xavier. And then we had like this Russ, like this guy who was like kind of like running a little bit like Wolverine. So they all have like different powers, I guess, or maybe they have the same. I don't know. But interesting little take here. Breadcrumbs with this. Don't really have much to go off of, but definitely an interesting number one. Love the art style here by Jonas Scharf, excuse me. And the colors here really good as well. So that's that. And our retro issue is actually an issue I read for the first time about 3 years ago when I read the Iron Man by Kurt Busiek and Sean Chen omnibus. This issue, though, is written by Kurt Busiek, obviously. Art by George Perez, finishes by Al Vey, and colors by Tom Smith. So this issue is part of the Live, Free, or Die storyline, which, like I said, is in the Kurt Busiek and Sean Chen Iron Man omnibus. And it's kind of like a semi-follow-up to Operation Galactic Storm. It has stuff that trickles down from the events that happen in that storyline, which I won't spoil here, so anyone who wants to read that can go check that out. But Warbird's court-martial has begun, and she is being court-martialed for herself being irresponsible with her drinking habits. Throughout the Iron Man Kurt Busiek run, Warbird, Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers is referenced a lot, shows up a lot in these issues, and she is an alcoholic, and that's obviously why she's part of the reason why she's included in the Iron Man books is because Iron Man kind of shares that disease, I guess, with her, or whatever you want to call it. But she's being court-martialed by the Avengers because of that, and the court-martial is actually interrupted by an alert signaling another threat by the Lunatic Legion. So Warbird quits before being booted. So she's walking out as the Avengers go up to space to find out what's going on. Scarlet Witch stays behind to watch the mansion where she is visited by Wonder Man. So that's another plot thread that I totally forgot about that kind of weaves its way into this run here, at least with this issue, where there's a relationship developing between Wonder Man and Scarlet Witch. And obviously, I think there was even references to it in the past as well. But the Avengers rush off to the moon where they find the Lunatic Legion sacrificing themselves to power their weapon. Carol decides, after much trepidation, to help them. After all, she does, and she flies to assist the Avengers. Firestar steps up and saves the day. And in the epilogue, we see Cap speaking with the Kree Supreme Intelligence. And we also see Carol relapsing back into drinking. So, reading this issue again, man, there's just a lot of narration and just text everywhere. I just can't, I know this is like late 90s, but man, I feel like we could get rid of some of that stuff and just give us some more space to admire all that George Perez art. I kind of feel like that's my only gripe with this issue. I mean, I don't know. This is definitely a sign of its time, but yeah, I definitely enjoyed rereading this and excited to see if my co-host, I think they might have read this, maybe not.
It's the retro book. We all had to read it.
I meant to say, like, have you read it before reading this?
Yeah.
For the first time. Okay.
Yeah. This is early on. I think this is right after the team is reformed again after the first big arc, which is like every Avenger ever, which is a fun way to start the run. But man, it feels dated, more dated than it does in terms of recency, because like this is like 97, 98, but it reads earlier than that. It's a very densely packed issue. This is like a letter's nightmare, covering up so much of that George Perez art with all those boxes. It feels wrong almost.
I don't think it's bad,
but it's good. No, it's very good.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not just, you guys are talking about covering up the art and stuff like that. It's not just Busiek. Like, Perez, by his nature, his art is dense as well. Like, he works with lots of panels, lots of detail, lots of characters in panels and everything. That's his whole thing. Obviously, some of that is expected on an Avengers book. But, if you stripped out every single word, reading Crisis feels like, trudging through, it feels like work as well. So that's just like Perez's thing. So I think actually like it does feel dated, like almost like Busiek Perez, like it almost feels like a late 80s book or something like that, even though it was coming out in the late 90s. But I think that's kind of what Marvel was going for with some of the Heroes Return books and kind of what they needed to like get out of the 90s, even though just a couple years later, you shift to a whole different style. But I mean, I like it. I mean, I feel like, reading this run on Avengers, like it feels like very satisfying. Like it takes you a while to read an issue, and like I don't think they're slow or anything. They're just like packed. You get some value.
There's so much happening in this.
Yeah.
You got the Avenger. I don't like being mean to Brian Michael Bendis, but like if Brian Michael Bendis wrote this, guarantee you don't see the Avengers go to space, fight the Kree, and all the stuff with Warbird / Ms. Marvel this issue. Like, no way that happens.
Yeah, I mean, this crossover is only 4 issues, and I guess I don't know that Busiek co-writes the Cap and the Quicksilver issues. He might, but he might not even be involved in half of it. Obviously, it was coordinated, with editorial and all the creators. But like, nowadays this would definitely be at least a little bit longer. But yeah, I mean, it's a good issue and we read number 4 not too long ago either, which was
very recently.
That's basically the end of the very first arc and when they like formally make the team. And then just some dumb continuity notes, because obviously this is the end of a 4-part crossover and there's heavy involvement with some other characters and threads that go outwards. Dan mentioned a lot of the Carol Danvers stuff, which most of all that like alcoholism stuff, that continues in the actual Iron Man book. You see touches of it in Avengers, especially when she like formally rejoins the team, but it's mostly handled in Iron Man. This event is what causes Cap to get his energy shield in the Mark Waid run, the issue after that. I guess it would be Cap number, I think it's actually Cap number 9, not 8. Like they're not exactly at the same pace for this crossover. And some of the Kree elements here, like the plot points, get picked up in Avengers Forever.
Yep. And then just even more to come. We got the great stuff with Ultron not too much longer after this.
Yeah,
and I still have I still have an entire second omnibus of this run to read, though I know Perez leaves at some point, but let's get into picks.
Yeah, he's there for a while, at least 2 full years. Mine is someone else should start going first on these because I always forget, or I just need to actually remember this.
Let me do it again. That'll give you more time. All right, picks of the week. I want to go with Amazing Spider-Man.
I'm gonna go with Swamp Thing.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna go Basilisk number 1.
Oh wow,
that was pretty cool first issue, and definitely leaves a lot to be discovered. So
maybe I should read it.
All right. I like all the setup for Chameleon Conspiracy. Swamp Thing continues to be one of the most intriguing books at DC with great art, and then Dan has success with the new Indie number 1. So it's a pretty good choice for 3 different books for picks of the week from us. It's the first time in a while that none of us have doubled up on one too. But that is your show for this week. Stay safe. Tune in next week. We'll be back with more comic books reviews. Bye.